All right, everyone, we start off today talking about CBS News. Of course, they are repeatedly refusing to release the full transcript of their interview of Kamala Harris. There's one obvious reason for this, and I'm not sure how it's a good idea to not release the transcript, because it makes it look like you're hiding something. I mean, what are you hiding exactly? I have a feeling that CBS isn't going to answer that question either. They interviewed Kamala Harris, and they heavily edited it down. Now, if those edits are just, there was a pause, and they shortened the pause. They wanted to make it as compact as possible. They're doing their jump cuts and stuff. That's perfectly fine. That happens all the time when interviews are released. Tendency is, if you have 5 seconds of dead air, you foreshorten that. You want to make it more compact. That way people pay more attention to it. There's no harm in that. You're not editing out anything that they've said. You're not editing out anything weird that they may have done, or maybe, they did a do-over for the question because it's like, well, Miss Harris, that answer is probably not going to go over well with the public, so maybe we'll do a redo and we'll just blank that out. That would be different. That would, and then that's probably what's being done. There's a reason why they're not releasing the transcript. CBS is quite clearly lock, stock, and barrel behind the Kamala Harris campaign. She made a bunch of mistakes, a bunch of gaffes. She cackled, she couldn't answer basic questions, and so they parsed it out. That's the long and short of it. That's what happened. There's no other reason why they wouldn't release the transcript. If the transcript more or less syncs up with the interview that we saw, which was flowing and coherent and all of these wonderful things, you'd say, well, here's the transcript. It's 99% identical. We edited out a couple of ums and uhs or something like that, just for time's sake. That's fine. And it's perfectly fine if you edit out dead air. If I was interviewing somebody, not live, which is how I do it, and if I had to sit down with a major political figure, and they took 5 or 6 seconds to respond to a question, they're like, well, here's my tax proposal. Okay, the doesn't mean anything. You just launch right into it. You segue into it. That would be proper editing. You're not removing anything of any substance that anyone would really give a shit about. That's not what CBS is doing, and that's why they're not going to release the transcripts. I have a feeling that maybe after the election they will, especially if Kamala loses. They'll say, well, we always had our misgivings about Miss Harris, or something like that. This has happened more than one time. Look at Hillary Clinton as a great example of this. We'll be separately treating later on in the live stream today, this late morning, actually, on some other interesting things that are happening right now within politics pertinent to this basic premise. But Kamala Harris, if I had to guess, she is not good at giving answers. Not answers of any substance, at least. She's not really interpersonal. She's not good at interacting with other people. She doesn't like to be questioned. It doesn't matter whether it's a softball or a hardball. She responds the same way. The problem is she's so scripted, so guided, so teleprompted that she's unable to give any form of answer off the cuff. So, for instance, I'm going to put myself in CBS's shoes, or I'm Joy Reid right now. Believe it or not, I'm Joy Reid. Miss Harris, you're such a stunning and brave example to young women all over the country. What's your message to them? In the political sense, or whatever it happens to be. Well, whoa. And she just starts cackling, and I'm sitting there. That's a stunning and brave answer, Mrs. Harris. Well, I think that young women should be in more leadership roles. Well, Mrs. Harris, what would you do specifically to promulgate young women in roles of leadership, to get them primed for prime time within a political context or business context or whatever it happens to be? Well, I've got ways of doing this. We're looking into all of our. She's not going to answer the question. The problem is that's not going to look good to the average undecided voter. There are fewer and fewer of them, but those few millions of voters do actually matter, which is something that the Democrats don't appear to understand fully at the moment. So if I'm sympathetic towards her, I'll say, okay, well, we're going to cut that segment. Would you like to re-answer? Well, yeah, my proposal is more young women in roles of politics. Okay, well, how are you going to get them in there? Well, we've got methods to do that. We're looking into all of or something vacuous like that. It'll be very teleprompted, very scripted. It's going to come off as gawky. If I had to guess, I would say that mainly the things that were parsed out weren't even gaffes, so to speak. It was just non-answers. It was her being gawky because she can't answer the questions without a script in front of her. She's incapable of doing so. And keep in mind, this is against the framework of her probably getting notes and all of the questions before the interview even fucking happened. Donald Trump goes in there, he doesn't give a fuck. He's a loose cannon and he just says whatever the hell he wants to say. Gaffes and all. And there have been some times when Donald Trump goes off the rails, and there are, if not gaffes, at the very least, things that don't seem quite flowing with the conversation. He can be adversarial. It often is. He can sometimes non-answer, admittedly, like any politician will. But Kamala has made a sport of it. She's made it in her entire career of not answering questions, even when she's being questioned by people, like the people at CBS News, that genuinely want her to win. If CBS News can't ask cover for her, who can? She goes on with Brett Baier, and she doesn't answer any questions at all. And people say that he's being a bully because he's doing exactly what he did, by the way, against Donald Trump years ago when he grilled him. And this is Brett Baier. He's a neocon. He's not exactly a MAGA Republican or something like that. How much more then will CBS ask cover for the Democratic nominee? They quite clearly are. They're not going to release the transcript because you would see questions that didn't appear in the final interview. You would see answers that didn't appear in the final interview. You would see stuttering and cackling and all of these other things that we know are hallmarks of the Kamala Harris campaign. We know this. We've seen it on live stage on a number of occasions. It doesn't take a genius to figure out why they're not going to release the fucking transcript. So they're circling Wagons. They're hoping that she wins. I don't think that she will. Thankfully, I'm optimistic. Call me naive. I call myself white-pilled. I refuse to believe that the American people are going to be taken in by such a snake oil salesman, or saleswoman in this case, supposedly. I do not believe that the American people are retarded. Kamala apparently does. She's expecting to be elected without having actually put forward a platform. That's what she expects. I believe in my fellow Americans to reject this notion, to reject this nonsense, and at the end of the day to deliver a victory for Donald Trump. Is he perfect? No. Is he capable of going in and actually hosting an interview and answering the questions? Whether he's right, whether he's wrong, according to your subjective opinion, remains to be seen on any given issue. But is he capable of actually answering? Yes. Is anyone circling fucking wagons for him? No. If he makes a verbal stumble, it'll be front page news. With Kamala, when she goes on a captive legacy media network, they circle wagons completely. It's like watching a bunch of Comanches attack a group on the Oregon Trail. They've already circled the wagons around their leader in order to absorb the fire from the arrows and so forth. It's quite a sight to behold. Quite an organized effort, actually, when you think about it. Extremely organized, very centralized, which is the hallmark of authoritarianism, by the way. Kamala Harris could not answer basic questions. And even in the final interview, which was chopped and screwed more than Viper's fucking crack cocaine, even in the final interview cut that they did release to the public, even then she wasn't able to answer basic substantive questions on things like immigration, taxation, regulation, foreign policy. She's an empty suit. She has no idea what she's doing. That's about all. Peace out.